They did not chase their prey. They did not roar like beasts. They did not strike from the shadows. They sang, and men sailed willingly toward death. The sea is calm, too calm. In the imagination of the ancient Greeks, the sea was never empty. It was alive with gods, with monsters, with memory. Every horizon concealed a test. Every wind carried the possibility of fate. The Sirens dwell not in storms, but in deceptive stillness. They waited on an island of bone, white rocks, broken ships, the skeletal remains of men who had come too close, fragments of oars, bronze helmets, sun-bleached ribcages, no visible attacker, only wind. The earliest surviving literary description of the Sirens appears in Book 12 of the Odyssey, traditionally attributed to Homer, composed in the late 8th century BC. In Homer's account, they are not mermaids, they are not fish-tailed, they are something older, something stranger. The Sirens were bird women. In early Greek art, particularly 6th and 5th century BC pottery, the Sirens are depicted with the body of a bird and the head of a woman, wings extended, claws gripping stone. This form was not accidental. In Greek symbolic language, birds belonged to the liminal realm sky and earth, life and death. They crossed boundaries. So did the Sirens. Why birds? Why women? Why music? The Greeks feared what crossed categories. Hybridity was destabilizing. The Sirens were boundary creatures, neither fully divine nor fully monstrous. They were thresholds. The Sirens' island is described as being surrounded by meadow that detail matters. Meadow, not jagged rock, not hellfire, green grass, flowers, sunlight. The danger is aesthetic. The threat is beauty. The meadow conceals the bones. The voice conceals the trap. The promise conceals the cost. Ships do not crash in terror. They drift in wonder. In Homer's text, the Sirens do not promise pleasure. They promise knowledge. They call out to Odysseus, "Come here, renowned Odysseus. No one ever sailed past us without listening. We know everything that happened in Troy." This is crucial. They offer omniscience, memory, total comprehension. In a culture where Clio's glory and remembered fame defined immortality, knowledge was power beyond mortality. The Sirens offer something more dangerous than lust. They offer understanding. Classicist scholars such as Froma Zeitlin and Gregory Nagy have noted that the Sirens' song parallels the epic poet himself. The Sirens narrate, they know all things, they sing history. In this interpretation, the Sirens become a dark mirror of the poet. The danger is narrative absorption. To listen too deeply is to forget movement, to forget life. The Sirens do not drag men to death. Men abandon the world to hear them. This detail separates them from later medieval moral allegory. They do not physically assault. The victims starve on the shore, transfixed. It is self-destruction through surrender. The Greeks understood temptation not as force, but as surrender to excess. The Sirens are excess embodied. Why do humans move toward what destroys them? Why does forbidden knowledge feel irresistible? Why is beauty often framed as danger in myth? The Sirens represent the collapse of discipline, the abandonment of war and rudder, the refusal of forward motion. Ships begin to pass closer, narrative montage of unnamed sailors. Each hears the song differently. One hears his mother's voice, one hears glory, one hears forgotten love. The song is personalized. This is not explicitly stated in Homer, but later interpretations and mythographic traditions imply the Sirens' power dance. Temptation speaks in the language of the listener. The sea grows quieter or slow. The melody grows clearer, and then silence, bright daylight, calm sea. The Sirens were not always monsters. According to later sources, including Apollonius of Rhodes and Hyginus, the Sirens were daughters of the river god Achelous. In some traditions, they were companions of Persephone before her abduction by Hades. After failing to prevent her kidnapping, Demeter transformed them, granting wings to search for her. In this reading, the sirens are cursed mourners. Their song is lament, the tone shifts. Are they predators or grief made permanent? If they were once maidens, their transformation marks punishment. Greek myth frequently punishes female figures through metamorphosis. The sirens join a long list: Scylla, Medusa, Eric. Metamorphosis reflects disorder. The sirens' hybridity encodes trauma. If their song began as grief for Persephone, then their power emerges from loss. They sing because they failed. They lure because they are trapped. Ancient sailors feared specific waters: straits, reefs, hidden rocks. Some scholars argue the sirens may mythologize dangerous coastal geography, perhaps near southern Italy or Sicily. The Sirens' Island could encode maritime warning, myth as navigational caution, song as metaphor for complacency, but myth rarely reduces to geography alone. The emotional intensity of the sirens transcends coastal hazard. Before Odysseus, before Orpheus, before heroes, the sirens were simply there, singing, testing, waiting. The sea became a moral proving ground. Every ship that approached had to choose curiosity or survival, beauty or duty, knowledge or life. Waves erase evidence. The sirens remain perched, waiting for the next sail. They are patient. Temptation always is. Many ships fell silent on those rocks, but one man decided he would hear the song and live. Many men heard the sirens, but only one chose to hear them on purpose. And there he stands, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, not the strongest of the Greek heroes, not the fastest, not the most beloved by the gods, but the most curious, and perhaps the most dangerous. Before the sirens, there was Troy. The Trojan War, preserved in epic tradition, had ended. The city burned, heroes were dead. Odysseus had survived not by brute force, but by cunning metis. In Greek thought, metis signifies adaptive intelligence, strategic deception, intellectual flexibility. It is the intelligence of the fox, not the lion. Classicist Marcel Détienne has argued that metis represents a uniquely Greek valorization of fluid intelligence over fixed strength. Odysseus embodies this trait more than any other Homeric hero. It was Odysseus who conceived the wooden horse. It was Odysseus who navigated diplomacy and deceit, and yet the man of strategy is about to seek something he cannot control. In the narrative of the Odyssey, the hero does not discover the sirens accidentally. He is warned. The goddess Circe, another liminal female figure associated with transformation, instructs him precisely how to survive. The pattern is important. Female figure warns male hero about female monsters. Circe tells him, plug your men's ears with beeswax, bind yourself to the mast. If you beg to be released, they must tie you tighter. The specificity of the instructions suggests inevitability. This encounter cannot be avoided. It must be faced. Here lies the essential question. If Odysseus knows the danger, why choose to hear? He could simply sail past in silence like any disciplined captain, but he does not. He demands exposure. Modern scholars have often interpreted this moment as the apex of Odyssean curiosity. He desires total experience, even the forbidden. The sirens promise knowledge of all that happened at Troy. For a man defined by his role in that war, this is irresistible. He wants to hear how he will be remembered. He wants narrative confirmation of his own legend. In this way, the sirens do not tempt him with sensuality. They tempt him with immortality. The sirens in Homer speak in epic meter. Their song resembles the voice of the bard himself. Gregory Nagy and other Homeric scholars have noted that the sirens function as rival narrators. They claim omniscience. We know all the suffering the Greeks endured at Troy. This is the language of epic authority. The sirens are offering Odysseus the ultimate flattery to hear himself mythologized. Thus the danger is meta-poetic. If Odysseus yields fully to the Sirens' narrative, he ceases to be a participant in story and becomes its static audience. To listen completely is to abandon forward motion. In epic logic, movement equals life. Stasis equals death. The crew begins preparing, beeswax softened in hands. Ears sealed, oars dip into water. Odysseus orders the ropes. He is tied to the mast. His posture is upright, almost cruciform. This image has fascinated scholars and artists for centuries. A man bound upright to resist invisible temptation. He has engineered his own imprisonment as the ship nears. Can intelligence truly master desire? Can preparation defeat enchantment? Is exposure without surrender possible? The sirens begin to sing. Their voices are not shrill, they are beautiful, gentle, persuasive. They do not shout, they invite. Homer's text preserves only fragments of what they sing. They address Odysseus by name. Recognition is key. Temptation personalizes itself. They promise insight, total understanding. No one has ever sailed. Passed without stopping, they claim. Implicitly, you are greater than all who came before. This is not seduction of the body, it is seduction of ego. Odysseus begins to strain against the ropes. His body convulses. He shouts orders to release him. He commands the crew to turn toward the island, but the crew cannot hear him. Their ears are sealed. This inversion is psychologically profound. The captain, normally the source of authority, is rendered powerless. His men, temporarily deaf, become agents of survival. Authority shifts from voice to discipline. Odysseus's rational plan now restrains his emotional impulse. His prior intelligence saves him from his present self. Some interpreters have suggested that Odysseus does not conquer the sirens. He merely survives them. He is not immune. He is not superior. He is overwhelmed, restrained only by rope. The ropes represent structure, law, community, constraint. Without them, he would have perished like any other. Thus, the myth suggests that no individual, however clever, is immune to destructive allure. Survival depends on pre-commitment. Modern behavioral economists might call this a commitment device. But the Greeks encoded it in myth long before theory. The ship passes the island. The song fades. Odysseus collapses. The ropes are untied. The beeswax removed. No one speaks. The sea resumes its rhythm. The moment is over, but the psychological scar remains. He has heard something no mortal was meant to hear. He has glimpsed total knowledge and survived the pull. Later traditions claim that the sirens were fated to die if a ship passed them unharmed. In some accounts, they fling themselves into the sea after Odysseus escapes. In others, they remain eternal watchers. The multiplicity of endings reveals something essential about Greek myth. It resists closure. The sirens are less individuals than archetypal forces. They cannot truly die. They can only be survived. The episode dramatizes internal conflict. Odysseus splits himself into two beings. The rational planner pre-encounter Odysseus. The impulsive listener enchanted Odysseus. The ropes connect them. Greek tragedy often explores this division between knowledge and action. The Sirens scene compresses that tension into a single maritime moment. Odysseus proves neither pure intellect nor pure discipline. He proves the necessity of foresight. In archaic Greek society, sailors faced real danger daily, unpredictable currents, hidden reefs, exhaustion. The Sirens' myth functions both symbolically and pragmatically. Stay disciplined. Trust preparation, beware of distraction, but it also reflects deeper anxieties about the power of narrative itself. The Greeks lived in a culture where poetry preserved memory. To be sung was to live forever. The Sirens weaponized that very principle. Odysseus survived by resisting the song, but another hero would confront the Sirens, not with ropes, but with music. Before they lured sailors to death, before they perched on rocks above graveyard seas, the Sirens may have been something else entirely in early Greek mythic tradition, preserved in fragments and later retellings such as the Homeric hymn to Demeter. Persephone is seized by Hades and taken to the underworld. In several later mythographic accounts, including those attributed to Apollodorus and Hyginus, the Sirens were companions of Persephone at the moment of her abduction. They were present. They failed. That failure becomes their origin. They did not protect her. They did not stop the descent. And for that they were changed in one. Tradition, Demeter, in grief and rage, grants them wings so they may search the earth and sky for Persephone. In another, they ask for wings themselves so they may pursue her. The distinction matters, punishment or agency. Scholars of Greek myth have long noted that female metamorphosis often follows trauma or failure. Medusa becomes monstrous after violation. Scylla becomes hybrid after jealousy. The Siren's transformation fits this broader pattern of mythic displacement of female suffering into bodily alteration. Their bird form is not random. Birds in Greek iconography frequently accompany death and lamentation. Funerary art of the archaic and classical periods often depicts bird women figures perched atop grave markers, a detail that scholars such as Erica Simon have interpreted as linking the Sirens to the soul's departure. Thus, from the beginning, they may not have been predators. They may have been mourners. Grief, if it does not find release, transforms, it hardens, it sharpens, it learns to sing. If the Sirens began as companions who could not save Persephone, their song may originally have been lament. The lament in Greek culture was powerful, structured, ritualized. Women often performed public mourning. Through song, the Siren's song may echo this ritual context. But removed from community, removed from healing, their lament becomes isolated, eternal, without resolution, without closure, and so it becomes dangerous. What happens when grief has no end? What happens when loss is permanent? What becomes of voices that are never answered? In the agricultural cycle myth of Demeter and Persephone, the world experiences seasonal death and rebirth. But the Sirens do not receive cyclical restoration. They are stationed permanently between worlds, neither fully alive nor fully dead. Ancient sources disagree on their parentage. Some traditions describe them as daughters of the river god Achelous. Others name their mother as a muse. The muse connection is significant. If the Sirens descend from the muses, divine patrons of poetry, then their song shares divine origin. This complicates the moral framing. They are not purely monstrous, they are twisted extensions of sacred art. The Roman poet Ovid later elaborates on their transformation in his Metamorphoses, emphasizing the physical hybridity and the sorrow embedded in their change. Each variant underscores instability. They are creatures of in-between, river and sea, meadow and rock, life and underworld, voice and silence. Anthropologists of myth often describe such figures as liminal, occupying thresholds. The Sirens embody liminality in multiple dimensions: physical hybridity, bird and woman; geographical positioning, shoreline between land and sea; ontological ambiguity, mourner or murderer; acoustic power, voice without visible violence. Their liminality makes them potent. The Greeks feared boundary violations, order depended on clear categories. The Sirens blur categories and therefore destabilize reality. We return to the sea, the meadow shifts to rocky shore, the golden light fades to maritime twilight. The companions of Persephone became guardians of a different threshold. Instead of searching for the abducted goddess, they are stationed near the root between the world of the living and the unknown. Sea, the Greek maritime imagination viewed the sea as both pathway and abyss. Crossing water often symbolized transition into danger or transformation. The sirens now guard that crossing, not with force, with invitation. What if the sirens do not seek to destroy? What if they seek to warn? Their song stops sailors, prevents forward motion. Perhaps the rocks beyond their island were treacherous. Perhaps their power is ambiguous destruction intertwined with preservation. This interpretive tension has fascinated modern classicists. Are they malicious? Or are they tragic? Greek myth resists binary categorization. Figures like the sirens are morally layered. They reflect the complexity of fate itself. The Persephone myth binds the sirens to the underworld cycle. Their island may symbolize an intermediate space not fully Hades, but adjacent. Their meadow mirrors the asphodel fields, their bones recall mortality, their song becomes a threshold hymn. In funerary contexts, bird women figures appear atop tombstones. This visual vocabulary suggests the sirens were associated with the soul's departure or with mourning ritual. Thus, the sailor drawn to the island may symbolize the soul drawn toward death. The sirens become psychopompic, guiding the soul across boundary. But unlike Hermes, who escorts gently, they do so through compulsion. The sirens' origin in grief adds psychological density. They are not temptation born of excess pleasure. They are temptation born of unresolved loss. Their song promises knowledge, but perhaps it is really memory, memory of Troy, memory of suffering, memory of what was lost. Odysseus is tempted not merely by knowledge, but by revisiting trauma. The sirens offer narrative closure, but closure through stagnation. In modern psychological terms, they resemble the pull of rumination, the compulsive revisiting of past pain. To linger is to perish, to move forward is to live. In archaic Greece, public voice was often male-dominated. Epic poetry was performed by male bards. Yet, lamentation, especially ritual mourning, was traditionally female. The siren's power emerges through voice. But detached from community structure, their autonomy unsettles. They sing without supervision, without containment. Their isolation transforms ritual into danger. This may encode cultural anxieties about unregulated female expression, a recurring theme in ancient literature. Imagine them newly transformed, wings unfamiliar, voices. Trembling, they perch on stone for the first time. They begin to sing, not yet seductive, still mourning. The sound travels over water. A distant ship slows. The first listener, the first fatal curiosity. The transformation is complete. The mourners have become myth. Unlike heroes, the sirens do not journey. They remain fixed. Time moves. Empires rise and fall. Sailors change. Languages shift. But they remain singing. This stillness contrasts. With Odysseus' restless motion, the sirens are eternal stasis. He is perpetual movement. The encounter between them dramatizes one of the central tensions of Greek thought: memory versus motion, knowledge versus survival, attachment versus return. One hero bound himself to resist their song, but another would confront them differently, not with rope, not with wax, but with music. A lyre string vibrates, we move toward Orpheus. The sea again, but this is not Odysseus' vessel. This is the Argo, a long, sleek ship cutting through mythic waters. On board are heroes Heracles, Jason, Castor, and Pollux, and among them stands a man who does not carry a spear. He carries a lyre. The sirens had defeated strength. They had nearly defeated cunning, but now they would face something more dangerous, a rival voice. The voyage of the Argonauts predates the Trojan War in mythic chronology. This places Orpheus' encounter with the sirens earlier than Odysseus in Apollonius of Rhodes' 3rd century BC epic, the Argonautica. The episode is brief but loaded with symbolic power. Unlike Odysseus, Jason is not the central psychological focus. The focus is Orpheus. This shift changes everything. WHO is Orpheus. Orpheus is no ordinary musician. He is described as the son of the muse Calliope, patron of epic poetry. In some traditions, his father is Apollo himself. He is myth's embodiment of sacred art. His music can move stones, charm animals, bend the will of gods. Later traditions even depict him descending into the underworld to retrieve Eurydice, another journey between life and death. Orpheus does not merely perform music, he alters reality through it. The Argo sails into the same waters where countless ships have failed. The sirens begin to sing, their melody rises across the waves. One Argonaut, Butes, is immediately overwhelmed. In Apollonius' telling, Bute sleeps toward the sea, drawn helplessly toward the shore. The danger is immediate, the pattern repeats. The pull is universal, but Orpheus is ready. He does not block his ears. He does not bind himself. He plays. The lyre begins. His music rises stronger, louder, more structured. For the first time, the sirens were not the only voice in the air. Orpheus' song competes, not by silencing, by surpassing. The Argonauts hear him instead. Their attention shifts. The sirens' melody weakens. Their enchantment breaks. Butes alone is carried toward the island, but Aphrodite intervenes and rescues him, adding another layer of divine complexity. The Argo sails past. The sirens are defeated. Unlike Odysseus' survival through restraint, Orpheus achieves victory through artistic dominance. This reframes the sirens. They are no longer unconquerable. They can be overcome, but only by equal or greater song. The episode becomes a mythic debate about art itself. Whose voice holds power? Whose narrative prevails? Scholars have noted that Apollonius' version may function as literary rivalry. The sirens resemble archaic epic tradition. Orpheus represents new poetic authority. By having Orpheus defeat them through superior music, Apollonius symbolically asserts the power of refined Hellenistic poetry over older traditions. The myth becomes meta-literary. The sirens represent inherited epic grandeur. Orpheus represents innovation. Art defeats art. Why does Orpheus succeed where Odysseus struggled? Because the sirens' power depends on singular attention. They require exclusivity. Orpheus fractures their monopoly. He redirects desire. He offers an alternative object of longing. Temptation weakens when a stronger devotion replaces it. This reflects deep psychological truth. Discipline restrains desire, but passion displaces it. The Argonauts do not survive by resisting beauty. They survive by choosing another beauty. Later traditions add a striking consequence. If a ship passed their island unharmed, the sirens were fated to die. In some accounts, they throw themselves into the sea after Orpheus' victory. Their bodies transform into rocks. In others, they simply lose their power. This detail reveals mythic finality. The sirens exist to test. Once defeated, they lose purpose. This mirrors Greek narrative economy. Monsters exist as obstacles, not protagonists, yet their symbolic force endures. Orpheus' victory suggests something radical. Art can overcome destructive enchantment, but Orpheus himself later fails in the underworld when he looks back at Eurydice. The same man who defeated the sirens cannot defeat his own doubt. This symmetry complicates triumph. Even the greatest artist cannot permanently conquer longing. The sirens' defeat is situational, not absolute. In Greek culture, music was not mere entertainment. It was cosmological force. Pythagorean thought linked musical harmony to cosmic order. To play music was to align with universal structure. Thus, Orpheus' victory is not random. It is order overcoming chaos, harmony overpowering destructive allure. The Argo sails beyond the island. The sirens' voices falter. Orpheus' lyre rings across open sea. The Argonauts row in rhythm to his melody. Did the sirens die? Or did they retreat deeper into myth? Later Greek art continues to depict them. They appear on funerary monuments well into the classical period. Their defeat in narrative does not erase their symbolic presence. They persist as caution, as metaphor, as memory. Odysseus survived by binding himself. Orpheus prevailed by singing louder. Two strategies, two philosophies, restraint and transcendence, both acknowledge the same truth: the sirens are real, not as creatures on rocks, but as forces within the human mind. The sirens faded from epic, but they did not vanish. Over centuries, they would change form, and their song would grow darker. We move toward their transformation in later Greek, Roman, and eventually medieval imagination. This is how most people imagine the sirens: a woman with the tail of a fish, a mermaid singing above the sea. But this is not what the ancient Greeks saw. The bird woman stands in its place, wings outstretched. In 6th and 5th century BC Greek vase painting, the sirens are consistently depicted as hybridavian beings: the body of a bird, the head and often breasts of a woman. These are not aquatic creatures, they are terrestrial and aerial. Their domain is not underwater, it is the shoreline. Scholars of Greek iconography have noted their frequent appearance on funerary monuments, particularly grave stelae. One famous example housed in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens depicts a siren perched atop a tomb holding a lyre. This is not predatory imagery, it is mournful. The siren becomes a visual shorthand for lamentation. Her wings do not signify seduction, they signify passage. So how did a bird woman become a mermaid? The transformation unfolds slowly across centuries, languages, and theological upheavals. In Hellenistic and Roman periods, the sirens begin to blend conceptually with other sea-dwelling beings. Greek mythology was never static. It absorbed, it merged, it adapted as Mediterranean cultures interacted. Greek, Phoenician, Egyptian, later Roman mythic motifs overlapped. The boundary between siren and sea nymph blurred. The Latin word siren began to travel beyond its original Greek visual context, and then came Christianity. When early Christian writers encountered classical mythology, they did not preserve it neutrally, they moralized it. The sirens became allegories. Church fathers such as Clement of Alexandria and later medieval theologians interpreted sirens not as hybrid mourners, but as symbols of lust and spiritual danger. The shoreline became a metaphor, the song became heresy, the body became temptation, the bird form associated in pagan art with funerary rites faded from emphasis. Instead, the aquatic seductress emerged. This was not a simple artistic shift. It was ideological. The sea, in Christian symbolism, often represented chaos and sin. To place the siren within the water intensified her association with moral peril. By the medieval period, illuminated manuscripts begin depicting sirens with fish tails. This form resembles earlier Mediterranean mermaid traditions and Near Eastern motifs. The siren and the mermaid fuse. The hybrid is simplified. Feathers are replaced by scales, wings vanish. Why? Because wings symbolize transcendence, scales symbolize sensuality. The moral framework has changed. The siren is no longer primarily linked to mourning and death. She is linked to seduction and sexual temptation. This reflects broader medieval anxieties about the female body and desire. The sirens did not change. Human fears changed. In archaic Greece, the danger was knowledge and memory. The pull of the past in medieval Christianity, the danger was lust and moral corruption. The siren's body adapted to the dominant anxiety of each era: bird woman, threshold, death, lament, mermaid, sensuality, temptation, sin. The myth becomes a mirror. Each culture reshapes the monster to reflect its deepest fear. During the Renaissance, classical mythology was revived but selectively. Artists like those influenced by Ovid's Metamorphoses embraced hybrid creatures, but the mermaid form had already solidified. The siren now appears in paintings as an alluring, partially nude figure. The bird form survives in scholarship and rare classical references, but popular imagination has shifted irreversibly. The Enlightenment further secularizes the image. By the 18th and 19th centuries, sirens become romanticized figures, tragic, seductive, ethereal. The moral condemnation softens, the aestheticization intensifies. The siren continues evolving in literature. In later European poetry, she symbolizes dangerous love. In opera, she becomes voice embodied. In modern reinterpretations, she often regains psychological complexity, not merely seductress, but misunderstood being. The trajectory from Homer to modernity reveals continual reinterpretation. At each stage, the siren reflects cultural obsession, archaic Greece, death and memory. Hellenistic refinement, artistic rivalry, Christian Middle Ages, sexual temptation, romantic era, tragic beauty, modern psychology, destructive allure and addiction, ancient vase painting, Roman mosaic, medieval manuscript, Renaissance soil painting, modern fantasy illustration. Each image morphs. Modern audiences often retroactively imagine Homer's sirens as mermaids. This is anachronistic. It flattens historical nuance. Classical scholars emphasize that conflating sirens with mermaids erases critical aspects of Greek symbolic vocabulary. The bird body connected them to death ritual and transcendence. The fish tail redirects them toward erotic maritime fantasy. Understanding this shift restores complexity to the myth. When the wings disappeared, something else vanished. The siren ceased to be a creature of mourning. She became only a creature of desire, but desire itself remains powerful. The myth survives because its core remains intact, a voice that draws us toward what may destroy us. Whether winged or scaled, the archetype persists. Today, when someone refers to a siren, they often mean an alarm, a warning sound. Ironically, the word has inverted. The siren once lured to danger. Now the siren warns against it. Language preserves echoes of the myth. Even when misunderstood across centuries, the siren changed form, but her power endured. And in the modern mind, she would transform again, not into a creature of sea or sky, but into an idea. The sirens no longer sit on rocks. They no longer sing across open water, and yet their song has never been louder. The sound begins softly, a notification chime, a whisper of possibility, the pull towards something that promises more. In antiquity, the sirens were mythic beings, but myth rarely disappears. It internalizes. Carl Jung described archetypes as recurring symbolic patterns embedded in collective human consciousness. Whether or not one accepts Jung's framework literally, the persistence of certain mythic motifs across centuries is undeniable. The siren endures because she encodes a universal psychological tension, the conflict between desire and survival, the allure of knowledge, pleasure, or escape, the cost of surrender. In the ancient world, the sirens promised knowledge of Troy. Today, countless forces compete for attention. The sirens once offered omniscience. Now the world offers infinite scroll. The parallel is not trivial. The sirens required fixation. To look, to listen, to stop rowing. Modern distraction operates similarly. Psychologists studying behavioral addiction describe intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards that intensify compulsion. The siren's promise of "we know everything" mirrors the illusion of total access offered by modern information systems. Each notification whispers, "Come closer." You might learn something vital. You might miss something essential. The fear of missing out, FOMO, is structurally sirenic. The sirens never forced their victims. They invited. Temptation operates through agency. You choose to approach. You choose to listen. You choose to linger. Addiction researchers note that destructive patterns rarely begin with coercion. They begin with curiosity, pleasure, exploration. The sirens are mythic embodiments of voluntary self-destruction. The bones on their island are not victims of attack. They are victims of surrender, but not all sirens are trivial distractions. Some are grand power, fame, recognition. Odysseus was not tempted by sensuality. He was tempted by glory, by hearing himself immortalized. In modern terms, this is the siren of ego, the craving to be known, to be remembered, to be validated. Sociologists of media culture observe that visibility has become a form of capital. The promise of being seen can override caution. The sirens once promised heroic narrative. Now the culture promises viral immortality. Different instruments, same melody. There is another dimension. The sirens offered knowledge of the past. Trauma survivors often describe the pull of rumination, replaying events repeatedly, even when it harms forward movement. The siren song can represent the seductive pull of unresolved memory. The island becomes psychological fixation. The bones become frozen time. Odysseus survived because he chose movement over immersion. He heard the past but did not dwell in it. Within every person, there is an Odysseus, and there is a listener straining against the rope. The myth dramatizes internal conflict, impulse versus discipline, curiosity versus caution, immediate reward versus long-term survival. Modern neuroscience describes dual process theory: fast, emotional cognition versus slow, rational control. The sirens are fast cognition embodied, immediate allure. The mast and ropes are executive function, planning, pre-commitment, constraint. The Greeks expressed this tension in narrative form long before cognitive science named it. Modern literature and film continue to reinterpret siren archetypes: the seductive villain, the addictive substance, the charismatic demagogue, the haunting melody in a minor key. Even the word siren now describes emergency alarms, warning signals. Ironically, the name of temptation has become the sound of caution. Language remembers what culture forgets. Odysseus resisted through structure. Orpheus overcame through superior beauty, but neither erased the sirens from myth. Temptation cannot be destroyed, only navigated. The sirens are not evil, they are not moral, they are forces. They exist wherever desire outruns wisdom. The question is not whether sirens exist. The question is whether we sail prepared. There is another possibility. The siren song need not always destroy. Music itself is not the enemy. Desire itself is not the enemy. The Greeks did not portray Odysseus as rejecting knowledge. He wanted to hear, he sought experience. The key was containment, integration, structure. The myth suggests that beauty and danger are intertwined. The goal is not isolation from allure, it is mastery of response. The city dissolves, the sirens still sing, not from distant rocks but from within the human heart. A ship approaches. This time the viewer stands at the helm. No instructions, no goddess warning, only choice. Every era has its sirens. Every life has its crossing.